The story is told of an old man, frail and sickly, who lay in bed, his body a wrinkled heap. His wife tended to his needs as best she could. She fed him small cups of broth and mopped beads of sweat from his brow. She ground his pain pills into powder and mixed it into watery oatmeal and honey in hopes that he would swallow some of it. But his pain outlasted the medicine. "Can I do anything else for you?" his wife asked at the end of each day. And the answer was always the same. "No, love, go rest. You've already done too much. Just let me dream. Just let me dream," he repeated. Then he'd close his eyes and wait for sleep to bring him dreams, his only reliable medicine. Just let me dream. Children have all sorts of dreams as they're growing up. I know I did. I dreamed of becoming an astronaut and building a colony on the moon. Then I had a dream that I'd become a meteorologist and figure out how to control the weather. That didn't work out too well. We have so many dreams for our future when we're kids. But all too often, our wild-eyed dreams fade from our mind as we grow older and are sobered by the realities of life. Just let me dream. Researchers discovered that people deprived from entering REM sleep, the dream phase of sleep, displayed symptoms of irritability and anxiety. In one dream study, researchers repeatedly woke up volunteers just before they entered the dream state of sleep throughout the night. So they slept the same amount of time as they normally did, they just didn't dream. The next day, these volunteers were disoriented, depressed, grouchy, short-tempered. As the study continued night after night, the subjects became more agitated. Researchers concluded that dreaming recharges the mind and revitalizes the body. They determined that dreaming is necessary. Just let me dream. A 17-year-old named Joseph had a dream. He told his brothers, and they hated him for it. But Joseph kept dreaming. He told his next dream to his father and his brothers, and this time his father rebuked him, and Joseph's brothers resented him even more. The world doesn't always appreciate dreamers. Just let him dream. First, Joseph dreams of his brothers binding sheaves in the field. And he says, "Suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, and then your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." And if one dream was insufficient, Joseph dreams again. "The sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." Joseph's dream disrupted what the family thought should happen, the way that things were supposed to be. After all, there's a proper ordering of things in a family with the oldest at the top, and Joseph's 10 older brothers were not eager to see that ordering turned on its head. It's easy to see why the brothers were frustrated with their kind of snotty little brother, right? It was bad enough that Joseph was so greatly favored by their father Jacob. It was bad enough that they had to see him strutting around in his fancy coat, spying on them and taking bad reports about them back to their dad. But repeatedly telling them of his dreams of being in charge and ruling over his entire family, it was too much. So they conspired to get rid of the dream. Actually, it says they conspired to kill Joseph. And because I love the intricacies of linguistics, I'll tell you that the Hebrew here is a relatively rare verbal construction that is both reflexive and causative, What that means is that another way to capture this verse in translation is they caused deceit to themselves to kill him. They caused deceit to themselves to kill Joseph. The envy, the resentment, the hate, the pain of their dysfunctional family system, the sense that there just wasn't enough love to go around for all of them, the fear, the desire to maintain control, all of these swirled together until they caused deceit to themselves. And violence seemed like the only answer. Joseph's brothers threw him in a pit because of his dreams. They could not let him dream. The threat was too great. They saw him wanting to be higher than them, and they were determined to make him lower. You think you're going to be ruler of the sky? Well, now you're going to dwell in the pit. They had to protect their privilege. And sacrificing the life of their brother seemed a small price to pay. Admittedly, Reuben, cowardly, tries to save Joseph. He thinks, we'll just put him in the pit and I'll come back later and get him out. But he's too late when he comes back. And then instead of confessing all to his father, Reuben goes along with the lie the brothers tell their father, that Joseph has been killed by wild animals. We may find it hard to empathize with the brothers and their decisions, but I think this text calls us to sit in their perspective for a moment. How do we cause deceit to ourselves in ways that protect our own privilege and power at the expense of those who we fear may take away our power? How do we cause deceit to ourselves about the way our actions or our inaction takes life away from those who have been marginalized? How do we either intentionally or inadvertently silence the dreams of others, especially those who may be very different from ourselves? How do we silence the voices of those crying out for help, the hungry, the unhoused? How do we try to kill the dreams of others? How are we, like Reuben, possessed of good intentions, but caught up in forces larger than ourselves and losing our agency in the midst of broader evil acts? What if we dreamed a little more? What if we allowed others' dreams to flourish? Just let me dream. Turns out that even though Joseph received the dream, it took many years before Joseph and his brothers could really understand the dream. As a teenager, it seems all Joseph could see was that he'd be at the top, he'd be in charge, he'd have power and control. But as we'll see over the coming weeks, the dream was really about using power and authority and privilege to care for those in need, to care for the hungry, the marginalized. But at the time, none of them wanted to hear that. They sold Joseph off as a slave to get rid of the dream. And what they didn't realize was that this dream wasn't simply wishful thinking on the part of Joseph. This was a God-sized dream. A dream of abundance and of enough for all to live. And although God in this story is hidden in the form of a dream, silent, not at all visible, the dream is the unsettling work of God. And spoiler alert, God's dream will prevail in spite of the brothers and through them. Even as Joseph sets out for Egypt as a slave, God has not abandoned the dream. Just let us dream. Do we have any dreamers here today? Can we imagine beyond what we see and experience? Can we catch the dream of how the world ought to be? How the church, how the community should be? Can we dream God's disruptive dreams? Is anyone dreaming? And not like daydreaming during my sermon, but dreaming of a world where there is a fair distribution of wealth and food for every single man and woman and child on every continent. Dreaming of a world where there is a home and education and health care for every human being. Dreaming of a world where there will be no more torture or violence of any kind. Dreaming of a world where we'll study war no more. Dreaming of a world where there will be no racism or sexism or classism, no more hatred of any kind. Dreaming of a world where Christians will actually love their neighbors as themselves. I'm dreaming this morning, but just let me dream. I know dreams can get you in trouble, like Joseph, but hopefully you won't throw me into a pit. Grounded in the love of God, may we dream. May we dream of a world in which we continue to look outward to Harrisonburg and beyond, where Muhlenberg is known not just as a beautiful stone building on Market Street, but as the incarnation of God's immanence and practical love in the world. May we dream of a world where we both live in and live out Christ's love. May we dream of a world where this continues to be a safe place for children, continues to be a place where those who don't have enough can come and find there is more than enough for all. May we dream of a world, as Martin Luther King puts it, where we finally realize that our destinies are tied together and that I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. Dreaming of God's world, God's dreams. And God's dreams will prevail. Just let us dream. These are God's dreams. God has given them to us, the young and the old, the powerful and the marginalized. And God's dreams will come to pass. Just let us dream. And as the brothers say, then we will see what comes of those dreams. Amen.